What's going on, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Who Gives a Dram. We haven't done an episode in a while where it's just been you and I reviewing a bourbon. So we're going to do that this week. We're going to review a bourbon that was sent to me a few months ago, and we actually reviewed on Bourbon with Friends, but I want to revisit it because it has had a few months to open now, and I'm curious to see how it's changed since my initial thoughts on it. We're going to review Puncher's Chance Bourbon today. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll see it right here. Puncher's Chance Bourbon. It is produced by Wolf Spirits Distillery. It is a blend of 4, 5, and 6-year-old bourbons with a 45% alcohol by volume proof point on here. Now, this is produced by a veteran within Campari, really a legend within the spirit game, Umberto Lucchini, who, again, we've had on the podcast. I had the pleasure of speaking with via Zoom. And it is partnered and backed by the legendary UFC ring announcer Bruce Buffer. Very close friend of mine, very good friend of mine. He definitely knows exactly who I am. And we interviewed Bruce and Umberto on Bourbon with Friends a few months ago. So make sure you go check out our interview over there just to see exactly what their thoughts on Puncher's Chance are and how the spirit and how this brand came to be and the spirit came to be. We go into a bit more depth about the juice itself, but I'm just going to be here since we're coming off the heels of UFC 281 last night. I want to talk some UFC and I want to drink Bruce Buffer's whiskey while I talk UFC. So I'm excited to get back into this bourbon today. It's probably going to be a bit of a shorter episode because I have stuff to do. So we're going to do a quick review. We're going to talk UFC 281, and we are going to discuss one other thing that I actually have been thinking of for a few days now, because I took the case off of my phone, and for some reason when you take the case off of your phone, it's almost like a breath of fresh air. Like you almost feel cleaner, and you almost feel like you're one of those minimalist like businessmen that have that like have like all black and white apartments that are like, they don't have any carpets in their apartment, and they have like a big round tub that only fits one person, but it looks over the city, and they have like 2 house plants, no pets, and they dust twice a day. Like, you ever see those TikTok people who do a day in the life, and they kind of just like have these really modern apartments overlooking the city, and they have like, like those watches that, that container for watches that like moves them because they have 15 different watches. Then they have like 15 different suits, and everything is monochromatic. It's black and white. You know what really pisses me off is that guy on TikTok that takes his sheets and he like steams them every single morning, and he does it really slow like an asshole. And he steams them real slow, and then he like does his pillowcases. He'll like really get them nice and soft and pat on them, and he'll spray some scent on his bed, and he steams the sheets, and he steams the comforter, and he makes it all perfect like a hotel bed just to mess it up 12 hours later. That really pisses me off. That's not how normal people live. And that's, I don't, it's like, imagine being that clean. Imagine having that apartment that I'm talking about and being that clean. It's super uncomfortable to me to be that clean. I like being clean and I like being tidy, but I like a house that feels lived in. I like a apartment, like my apartment, you can tell I live here because like, well, for me, because I have whiskey all over the floor, like bottles of whiskey, and I have like guy stuff. My apartment is the most guy. No, because I do have some artwork, and I have. That's really it. I have like I have a lot of tan in my apartment. Let's put it that way. A lot of tan. The walls are tan. The curtains are tan. Lots of tan. Um, how did we even start talking about this? It's Sunday afternoon. It is just about 4 p.m. Eastern Standard. And I have an interview this week that is going to be next week's podcast. So I wanted to make sure this week's was taken care of for tomorrow, Monday, November 14th. And I haven't had whiskey in a few days. Well, no, that's not true. So this weekend had a bit of whiskey, and it wasn't. Went out just expecting to grab a whiskey and a cigar. I was gonna start a fire, but it was raining, so I was like, I'll just go out and grab a cigar. Invited my friend. He came, and then a few more buddies came, and then Ryan. Y'all know Ryan if you listen to this podcast. He came with his sister and sister's boyfriend, and it kind of just turned into a mini bar crawl. And I had a headache the whole time because I'm 26 and I'm old as shit. So I didn't drink yesterday, mainly because I didn't want to. And it's tough to drink during UFC fights because they start, like the main event starts so late. I don't want to be tired from drinking for the main event. I want to be focused, especially with Israel Adesanya. You got to be focused because there's a lot of small things that you got to pay attention to. I'm going to pour some whiskey in the glass. Cork pop. Solid cork pop. Fake cork. Not the biggest fan. All right. Let this sit for a hair. But my overarching point is I feel like a new man now that my phone case has been off for a few days. I feel like I'm doing good for my phone. I feel like I'm letting my phone breathe, and I feel like I'm like a slick like New York businessman that has a watch case that rotates the watches and um has no carpets on my floor in a penthouse apartment in New York City. Um, but yeah, what else do we need to talk about? UFC 281. UFC 281 is what we need to talk about. A great night of fights. We'll go through them quickly. Um, the main card opened up with Dominic Reyes versus Ryan Stan. Dominic Reyes almost beat John Jones back in the day. He's been knocked out horrifically a few times. He took some time off, came back, looked good, then got knocked dead in round 2 by Ryan Stan. So um, I'm pretty sure Dominic Reyes is done with fighting. I mean, he's been knocked out too many times, and it's just his hair is barely hanging on. He's got the farthest hairline I've ever seen. He just needs to cut his hair and stop fighting for his own good. But that's the problem with fighters. Sometimes they don't know when to stop because it's all they know. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but someone needs to interject at some point and say, "Hey, listen, man," like they should have done with Frankie Edgar. "Hey, listen, man, you don't want to fight this 25-year-old stud because all his whole life is fighting and he's on the up, where you've been fighting for 15 years and your time is up." That was the second fight of the card. Frankie Edgar versus some up and comer. I don't even know his name, but Frankie Edgar got kneed in the face again to lose. So same thing happened with Corey Sandhagen. Corey Sandhagen knocked out Frankie Edgar with a knee. And this was Frankie Edgar's retirement fight, so a bit emotional, but it's kind of fitting that that's how he goes out. Now that I think about it, like he would want to go out on a shield. Obviously, he would want to go out with a win, but he would want to go out on a shield, and you know, I'm sure, it stings to lose, but I bet you he's glad it's over because he's been getting knocked out cold the past like 3 fights, maybe 4 fights, and you don't want to see a legend. That's how BJ Penn went out. That's how Anderson Silva went out. It's how a lot of these legends go out. Um, Not saying Luke Rockhold is an absolute legend, but he just got, dominated by Paulo Costa. All these people go out with bad losses, and you know it is what it is. But the third fight of the card was probably one of the most anticipated fights of the year. Michael Chandler, Dustin Poirier. I had no idea who I was rooting for. I kind of like, I love Dustin Poirier, but I also don't at the same time. And I feel the same thing with Michael Chandler. Like, I like Michael Chandler, kind of annoys me sometimes. I think Dustin Poirier is kind of an ignorant asshole sometimes. But 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 Michael Chandler, he's got that dog in him, whereas Dustin Poirier is actually really skilled and really good. But it was kind of like a clash of styles where Dustin Poirier likes to box and he likes to stick and move, footwork, head movement, where Michael Chandler will just bull rush you forward. He's talented on the hands, he's talented on the ground, but he's more of just like throw himself into the fire and see what happens type of fighter. That's why him versus Justin Gaethje last year was so fun to watch. Um, it was an interesting fight. Dustin Poirier won round one. No, Michael Chandler won round one with a few takedowns. Michael Chandler dominated round two, kind of just laid on top of him and uh, and maintained control for most of the round. But Dustin Poirier got the choke in round three and submitted Michael Chandler, and it was a crazy bloodbath. Michael Chandler broke his nose, and it was gushing blood, just straight gushing, and that was fun to watch. Uh, that's that's weird to say. Yeah, this guy was gushing blood. Great to watch. Um, but yeah, Dustin Poirier, he won, and he really cemented the fact that he's still the number one guy in the lightweight division. Maybe behind Charles Oliveira, but it was confirmed that Islam Makhachev is fighting Alex Volkanovski in Perth, Australia, for the UFC lightweight championship. So Alex Volkanovski's going for champ status. Islam's going for his first title defense. Um, so we'll see what happens at lightweight. Maybe Charlie Olives and Dustin Poirier rematch. Maybe Michael Chandler and Justin Gaethje rematch. That would be a fun rematch. But we'll see what happens, man. Lightweight's always fun, but it's gonna become not fun soon because all of these people that are so fun to watch, like Gaethje and Chandler and Ferguson and Poirier, they don't have that much longer because they get beat up a lot. Maybe 5 years max. That's like really pushing it. If they fight once a year, maybe. Um, and this was Dustin Poirier's first fight in 11 months since he lost to Charlie Olives for the lightweight championship. But that was a fun fight to watch. I enjoyed seeing Michael Chandler get beat up, and I enjoyed seeing Dustin Poirier get beat up. So that's always good. The co-main event last night was Zhang Weili versus Carla Esparza for the strawweight championship, and Carla Esparza actually looks pretty good in some instances. Had some nice sprawls on the ground, but Zhang Weili, as I predicted before the fight, is just Carla Esparza did not belong in there with her, and Zhang Weili just kind of dominated her and was way stronger. Not as technically sound on the ground, but just her strength and the fact that she was still pretty good on the ground um, was what got her, again, the submission victory. And the problem with Zhang Weili versus Carla Esparza was that Zhang Weili wasn't afraid of Carla Esparza's striking, so she was just walking forward and kind of throwing aimlessly towards Esparza with intent, but wasn't worried about the repercussions that may come back to her. So kind of like a I don't know. As an outsider looking in, it was almost obvious Zhang Weili was going to win. Like she's not going to not win. She just knocked out Joanna Champion, Joanna Jędrzejczyk, uh, a little bit ago. But the last fight, the main event, which is what I was spending my money on, well, I was spending my money on the main event and Poirier versus Chandler. But the main event was Adesanya, Israel Adesanya, middleweight champion, versus Alec, or they pronounce his name weird. They pronounced his name weird on the broadcast, but his name is spelled Alex, so his name is Alex Pereira. Um, the interesting thing going into this fight was Alex Pereira had beaten Israel Adesanya twice in the past in kickboxing. Once in 2017, in which he won by a split decision, and once in 2018, which he won by knockout. So that was the storyline going into this. Izzy was attempting to reclaim a victory against Alex Pereira. Alex Pereira has only had, I believe, like between 6 to 8 MMA fights, whereas Izzy is upwards of 25. Um, and you know, it was interesting watching both of them because they were, I mean, these are two of the highest class kickboxers that we've ever seen perform in the UFC. And Alex Pereira is a giant of a human being. They were saying he was weighing probably 210 pounds in the Octagon. They weighed in at 185 pounds the day prior. Izzy's not a small guy. He's skinny, but he's not small. And Alex Pereira looked like a light heavyweight. He looked like he was supposed to be a division above Adesanya. But that being said, the first 4 rounds, Izzy did a really good job picking him apart on the feet. Really knocked him, really rocked him at the end of round 1, and was doing a really good job of keeping up a good pace, mixing in level changes with attempting takedowns, initiating clinch scenarios in which he lost some of them. Alex Pereira would hit really good knees in those clinch moments, but Izzy also controlled the wrists really well in those tie clinch in those tie clinches, and also dominated Pereira on the ground as well with not really submissions attempts, but just control on top with a where he was dictating the pace of the fight at that point. And going into round 5, it was kind of obvious that Izzy was up probably 3-1 on the cards. Pereira probably won round 2, but Izzy clearly won round 3 and pretty obviously won round 1 and 4. So going into the 5th round, we were looking at 3-1. I think most people had it 39-37. I think that's what all 3 judges had it at. And Izzy was coasting in round 5 as well. But Pereira, although he was getting tired in the later rounds, he knew he only had 1 round left to go so he could empty the gas tank. And he bull rushed Adesanya, got him up against the fence, which Adesanya was doing a lot of this fight. He was really comfortable with having his back up against the fence and inviting that scenario, which is really weird to me because Pereira not only was the stronger guy, but I believe he had the longer reach and just a taller guy in general. So I imagined that Izzy probably wouldn't want that, but he kept inviting that scenario where his back was against the cage and Pereira was kind of trying to take advantage of that. But Izzy was for his credit, was doing a good job. Was doing a good job evading those big heavy punches while his back was against the cage. But you can only get lucky so often, and Pereira clipped him in round 5, wobbled him with a left check hook, I believe, and then landed a few clean shots. Izzy fell to one knee, got back up, and was defending himself, but was not intelligently defending himself. And Mark Goddard, the referee, stepped in, and Alex Pereira won by round 5 TKO. And I was pretty upset because I'm a big Israel Adesanya fan, and I always went against the people that said he was a boring fighter. Um, because he is, but he's also very technically sound. So it was always in the moment fun watching the fights because you never knew what was going to happen. But Izzy was definitely my favorite champion, and I think I've purchased every single one of his cards, every single one of his pay-per-views. So um, I'm sure I'm sure Izzy will take some time off. Actually, you know what? I don't think he's going to want to take some time off. I think he's going to want to get right back to it. He's the most active champion by far. And I think he really had Pereira's number. He just, that last round, I think he just, I don't want to say got too comfortable, but he just invited his back against the cage and invited Pereira to him. And I think that was just a mistake. Um, I think he gets the immediate rematch. I think it was a great fight, so I think it sells really well. Um, I would assume Adesanya is probably going to be favored going into that fight, but not. It actually probably be an even money line, but that's what I think is going to happen next in the middleweight division. I think Adesanya is going to rematch Pereira for that championship belt, probably within the first half of 2023. It would be my guess. Um, so there's that. There is UFC 281. Um, as always, had a great time watching it. Stayed home. We got a new couch at the Gilbert residence, so it's one of those couches that like recline. They press a button and it reclines, and it can go way back, but then the neck can come up, so it's almost like you have a pillow behind you. Game changer, especially for watching fights at midnight. Oh, another thing that I want to talk about, talking about movies, switch over to the other nerdy thing that I like, go from MMA to movies. I saw Black Panther 2 on Thursday night last week, and I made a TikTok about it. If you don't follow me on TikTok, go over at Who Gives a Dram. Make sure you follow me over there. But I made a little review about it. No spoilers over there, and I'll keep it brief here. But if you have the opportunity to go see Black Panther, I would highly, highly suggest it. Um, Ryan Coogler does a fantastic job honoring Chadwick Boseman while also, you know, keeping the Black Panther and keeping the legacy alive within the MCU. He does a really good job of basically using the cards he was dealt with because nobody was expecting Chadwick Boseman to pass away. And it's incredibly sad. He was very young, very, very bright future ahead of him. Already had an excellent career, but um, using that tragic event and twisting it into a motion picture, I'm sure was not easy. But Ryan Coogler did it very well. Um, Aside from the Chadwick Boseman tributes, I thought the emotion in the movie because of that was very was very forward. It was definitely more of an emotional movie. Um, Surprisingly enough, the acting was amazing. Letitia Wright, who plays Shiri, was incredible. Very like I was very surprised. I was not rooting for Shiri before going into this movie. Leaving this movie, I'm like, I'm excited to see more of where she goes because they do such a good job with where she is at the beginning of the movie and how she gets to where she is at the end of the movie. Very good. Um, the plot was awesome. The dialogue, the script was great. The soundtrack was and score was incredible. Um, the visuals, for the most part, were very good. There were some CGI scenes, as there always seems to be in Marvel movies now, that were just not good. There was one scene where M'Baku was standing with a few other of the Jahiri, I believe that's what they are, and they're standing outside of. They're standing in Wakanda, like in like a little village, and the green screen behind them is just so apparent, and it was distractingly bad. Um, there was a few more scenes as well. Uh, But, the underwater scenes, because the main villain was Namor, were very good and they looked very real. And I actually thought it was portrayed very well. And speaking more about Namor, uh, for the most part, I loved him in this movie. They did a great job expanding on his backstory and why he was the way he was. And they made you feel for him, similar to how they made you feel for Thanos, uh, even though you knew that an evil side was going to come out. Namor is an anti hero. He's not a bad guy, he's also not a good guy. He's just like Black Adam, which I haven't seen yet. But the way they went into his backstory was great. Um, they showcased his powers a bit. I wish they did it more, but Namor's a very, very strong character. His strength is compared to Thor, and if he's in water, it can be compared to a base Hulk. Not a mad Hulk, but a base Hulk. Um, I mean, he's the first mutant. He's a god-like figure to his people, which again they kind of portrayed that well, but without spoiling anything, I just really think that they could have done some things better with Namor. They could have showcased his powers a bit more, even though they did, and there were some really cool scenes. They could have done a better job at portraying him as a god-like figure, because that's what he is. He's a god-like figure to his people, and in the MCU as well. Um, Besides the CGI, Ironheart made her debut, and I could care less about Ironheart. I wish it was different, but they just kind of it felt like she didn't need to be in this movie. It really felt like there was no sense of her being in here. They kind of just threw her in to have that connection with Shiri and the Wakandans, um, because Shiri is a genius and Ironheart is a genius as well. The suit itself, which you do see in the trailer, so it's not a spoiler, is okay. The more I think about it, the more I kind of don't like it. Um, it's just weird to see an Iron Man like suit. I mean, Iron Man's been dead since Endgame. He was with us for 10 years before that. I don't want to say like it seems too soon because they need to keep doing it to sell toys and to make money, but it just doesn't. It didn't fit in. I didn't feel like it fit in well to this movie. Now maybe the TV show that they're coming out with will change my mind, but because I will watch a TV show because her character was fun in some aspects during this movie, but just didn't need to be in Black Panther 2. They introduced another suit as well, which I won't go into details, but it looks exactly like a Power Ranger suit with like fish. So kind of weird. But the Namor's people, they're not Atlanteans. They don't say Atlantis at all. But his soldiers, and you know, when they're on dry land, they look really cool, really really cool. I like how they did that warrior aspect with Namor's army. It looks really good. Um, I enjoyed the ending. I think that it made sense moving forward, and I think it opens up a lot in that space. That's all I'll get into. And there is a post credit scene. Really does a lot in building uh, the MCU and telling you where Black Panther's going from here. So I feel like I was expecting something else with the post credit, but what we got, I actually enjoyed it. Again, very emotional. Just Shiri, Letitia Wright, I think she should get some type of recognition. I don't know if Oscars are the right one, but some type of recognition for her part in this movie because she really, really killed it. And man, I was not rooting for her before this movie, but I sure as hell am rooting for her now. So that's all you can ask as a film company. You get the audience to be invested in your main characters, and they at least got me with it. So shout out to Disney. Mm-hmm. I take some water. But now that we've talked about the two big things I did this week. Real quick, I do want to mention this as well. This just literally happened. So this podcast is coming out Monday. On Wednesday, if you're listening in Boston, I will be in Boston. I should have this pulled up already, but I don't. Let me see if I can pull up the flyer real quick. Um, I sent it. There we go. I will be at the Next Door Speakeasy and Raw Bar Wednesday, November 16th from 6 to 8 for a Planet Ardbeg event. I don't really know what it is, but our friends at Ardbeg reached out to us at Bourbon with Friends, emailed us and asked if we could, you know, potentially either if we knew someone in the area or if we were in the area to attend the event, just to be there as, somebody, just to help promote the event. The purpose of the event is to introduce the newest Ardbeg limited edition series, which is the Ardbeg Hypernova, which I've heard and I think I saw at the Ardbeg distillery when we were there. But I'm excited to learn more about that. So I'm going to be there. I'm going to be in Boston Wednesday night. So if you're in Boston, hit me up. I'll be at this tasting from 6 to 8. If it's something that you think you might be interested in, shoot me a DM at Who Gives a Dram. And if you're in the area, I will give you some more details. Um, so let me know. And if you can't go and you're in Boston, just still hit me up and we'll see what's going on after. But yeah, that's gonna happen on Wednesday. This Wednesday, so that is the 16th, I think. Yeah, the 16th. So yeah, that's gonna be fun. Looking forward to that. Yeah, November 16th. Let's get into this bourbon though, because it's been sitting in the glass for a half hour now, and I feel like it's already had enough time to air out in the bottle itself. I've maybe taken a healthy pour out of this, and that's it. Um, Again, Puncher's Chance is a blend of 4, 5, and 6-year-old bourbon. This is an NDP, a non-distilling producer, and it comes from Kentucky. I forgot exactly what the uh where the distillery is from that they get it from. It's distilled in Kentucky, so it's not MGP. I don't remember the name of where they get it though. We say it in the interview with Humberto and Bruce on Bourbon with Friends. But uh this MSRP is at $30, which is kind of like the selling point where they say this is an $100 whiskey that they're selling for $30. And the purpose of the brand is to correlate, everybody has a puncher's chance. Makes sense in fighting in both boxing and MMA, and kind of makes sense in whiskey. Everyone has a puncher's chance to make a name for themselves and put out a product or get a win that's incredibly important to their careers. The bottle reads, Puncher's Chance is Kentucky straight bourbon inspired by two great American traditions, whiskey and fighting for what we believe in. This bourbon is made with heart and honor for those who know how far they've come, for those who started early, stayed late, day after day, year after year, for those who have the courage and strength to do what others won't. So, kind of like a Rocky Balboa type of inspirational message on the bottle there. And the bottle itself is nice and heavy. It's got like this metallic black on it. Cool tiger. I like the tiger on the bottle here. I think it this looks like a like a almost like an old school movie poster type of vibe to it. And there's even a little where it says the proof. It kind of almost looks like an old school movie ticket or maybe a boxing ticket. Um, but Yeah, I don't. I was gonna say something, but I forgot what I was gonna say. But anyways, yeah, this is backed by Bruce Buffer, and Bruce Buffer's my boy. Um, the only podcast guest so far where I wasn't nervous beforehand, but I was a bit like I didn't know how I was gonna go, and I watched Bruce Buffer last night. I mean, I watched Bruce Buffer. He's been a huge part of my life since 2015, so 7 years now. Almost 8 years. But yeah, that's what initially drew me to this bourbon, and then when they sent it to us and we tasted it and we reviewed it with the two guys, with the guy who produces it and the guy who spearheads the marketing and who spearheads moving product with Bruce, and who does a fantastic job, by the way. This is something that I was fairly excited to try. So we're gonna get into it now. Mm. Actually smells really good on the nose. A lot of like a lot of grain on the nose, a lot of corn, sweet corn, almost like Mexican street corn. Some fruit is in there as well, a bit of like pineapple almost. Apple is in there as well. This is actually I'm surprised. This is not what I was expecting, not what I remembered smelling the first time that we tasted this. A bit of like cereal grain in there as well. That's like that, just like when you pick up grain like rye, or it just has that kind of just like not musty but that earthy smell. That's in here a bit as well. Nothing overpowering, but it is in there towards the back. It's buttery. Yeah, no, it's actually has a really inviting nose on this, and it doesn't. I mean, this is 45%, so it's not a light whiskey, but it's it smells like this is gonna give you a bit of a punch. No pun intended. It smells like it's gonna be something that will hit you a bit harder than 45% or 90 proof. Yeah, that's almost like a sweet cereal on here, like a sweet fruity cereal. Like I get like a buttery note. I actually enjoy this nose a lot, so I'm quite surprised. But let's get into the actual tasting. Cheers, you guys! Thanks for joining for episode. This is episode 102. Um, Punch your Chance Bourbon. Let's get it. Oh, very. That I remember. That I remember. Very, very grain forward on the palate. Spicier. This is a 75% corn mash bill. I think it's 13% rye, 12% malted barley. Does that math add up? 75, 85, 86, 70, 80. Yeah. So, kind of average to high, mid to mid high rye content in here. I'd say more kind of just mid. Uh, but that rye does punch through. And with Umberto Lucchini's connection to Campari, I wonder if they actually might use some turkey juice in here as well, some wild turkey juice, because Wild Turkey is owned by Campari, and with Umberto Lucchini's connection to Campari, um, I would imagine that that's a possibility. I don't know if it's true or not, but like I said, it is a blend of 4, 5, and 6 year old. A lot of spice up front, a lot of like grain spice, a bit of oak is mixed in there as well. It's very oak and grain forward. There is a backward note of like a little bit of a fruit. Definitely apple. That's definitely the fruit on the palate, with a bit of like a almost like a No, that's just oak. That's just oak. It's very dark on the palate. It's sweet in the fact that there is that corn in there, so that's naturally gonna make it a bit sweeter. But it's got like almost like a tangy aftertaste, like a tangy finish that really brings out like the bitterness in the wood in a good way, not in a bad way, in a good way. It's almost like it brings out the complexities in the wood and the wood sugars on the finish. And the finish is not short. The finish is there. Um, you know what? I'm actually quite impressed with this. I didn't think I was gonna like this too much, to be completely honest with you guys. That buttery smoothness kind of stays on the palate as well after a few sips. Um, Definitely like almost like a bit of like a caramel marshmallow there as well. Not so much vanilla, but like caramel marshmallow, like a like a like a bit of a more robust sweetness, I suppose maybe is the correct term. Uh Overall though, I mean, the nose is not indicative of what the palate has to offer and vice versa, but the nose has some really different properties whereas the palate has completely different properties than the nose. Um but the overarching thing here is this is definitely drinking hotter than a 45% bourbon, which I'm impressed by. I think the average whiskey drinker, someone who's going to go out and buy a bottle they don't know what it is, or they've heard through a podcast, or they heard through Bruce Buffer, no one's. This is going to be kind of like a bottle. Like, this isn't going to be a bottle that Joe Schmo goes and buys because of Bruce Buffer. This is going to be a bottle that someone who's into UFC like me and also drinks whiskey will buy because of Bruce Buffer. And also what somebody will buy who might not even like the UFC or know who Bruce Buffer is, who know who Umberto Lucchini is, but go off of, like a YouTube review or a podcast review or something like that. And I think the target of what those two groups want to see in a whiskey are a bit of heat. I think a lot, especially of new whiskey drinkers, really look for something that is priced relatively low, but also packs a punch in terms of heat. And I think if more people are saying this drink's above its proof point, then that's just gonna help elevate it, and it's gonna give it a more of a of a of a of a chance to be seen on the shelf from a potential buyer. People like there's a lot of people who go by proof. They won't buy a 45% ABV bourbon because it's just too much. You know, it's just it's too little. I mean, it's not too much; it's too little. But I think the price point with this Puncher's Chance at $30 really helps out a lot. This is a fantastic buy at $30. You're looking at it being right next to Buffalo Trace. You're looking at it being right next to Wild Turkey 101, Larceny Small Batch, a little bit cheaper than Elijah Craig Small Batch. You're looking at it kind of making its way in with all of the entry level bourbons that we all know and love, Larceny Small Batch. Um, and this has a place in that sphere. It has a place within there. Would I reach for this over Buffalo Trace or Wild Turkey 101? Just those brands that have been around forever? Probably not, but I would occasionally. It's got a nice spiciness to it that just makes it seem like it's a higher proof bourbon. And I think that again, I think at the end of the day, that's what people want. They want high proof bourbons. That is just what they want to do. Whether it's someone who's just getting into whiskey that kind of knows a little bit, or a connoisseur that is looking for a good budget bourbon, but it's gonna provide that heat. this is it. This is good. And at $30, you really can't beat that price point. Now, I've seen this in stores quite often, so I know it is available. I don't know if you can find it wherever you guys are listening, but if you can at $30, I'd say 100% pick this up. 100% pick this up. Um, the price is really gonna influence the score here, because it is a very good buy. It is a very good buy, an extremely good buy, and I think I'm gonna drink this more often on a night where maybe I just need just a little bit, just at the end of the day. I think I'm gonna reach for this Puncher's Chance a bit more. So I'm gonna give this an 8.6 out of 10. Um, and that might be a bit on the low end, honestly. It might even be more towards the high eights, but I think that 8.6 out of 10 is giving it the respect it deserves. It's just, there's other bourbons out there that I think offer a bit more, but at the price that this is a very strong recommendation from me. Um, Pick up Hunter's Chance if you can. This is a solid dram, and I do enjoy this quite a bit. So 8.6 out of 10 for Hunter's Chance bourbon, and that's gonna do it here this week on Who Gives a Dram. Next week, I'm having a very special guest on, someone who I don't think she's been on a podcast before, so I'm excited to have her on. We'll announce her later in the week, but you're gonna make sure you want to tune into that episode because it will be fun. And I feel like I've talked to this person in the DMs for a few months now, and I feel like her and I have the same type of humor and we have the same type of vibe to us. So I feel like it's going to be a pretty entertaining conversation that you guys are going to want to check out. So um, make sure you are subscribed wherever you listen: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and every other podcast platform, so you never miss an episode. If you're up for it, leave a rating review on Apple Podcasts or on iTunes. That really helps out the show a lot. Tell your friends about Who Gives a Dram. Go on, check out my other podcast, Bourbon with Friends. You can find me over there twice a week. Who Gives a Dram, once or twice a week. Thank you for everyone who reached out about last week's episode with my very good friend Ryan Fuller. I had a shit ton of people reach out and just say how much they enjoyed the conversation, and I really enjoyed that podcast as well. So until next week, you guys, thank you again. Episode 102 down. We're almost at the end of the year, and I'm excited for the holiday season. It's Holly Jolly season, baby. So always remember, whiskey's the water of life. So let's start living.